The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
Good day with your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw. First with the highlights. The High Court has ruled that former chairman of the Police Service Commission, Paul Slow, can challenge the decision to suspend him, although the life of that commission has expired. In the region, foreigners in Antigua and Barbuda no longer have to apply for new work permits if they change employers. And internationally, the bombing of a children's hospital in Ukraine has raised concerns that Russia has committed a war crime. The details of these stories and more in just a moment.
Advertise with us on News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM for best coverage on programs on motivation, beauty and health, parenting and relationships, knowing your rights, and a variety of enlightening content, and get value for your money. Call our helpful staff today on 223-1056 or 223-1041 today.
Now for the news in detail. The High Court yesterday ruled that although the 3-year term of the Police Service Commission, PSC, has expired, former Chairman Paul Slow can still challenge the suspension of himself and other then commissioners. Justice Gino Prasad noted that neither the Attorney General nor Mr. Slow's lawyers had found any case to support their positions on what ought to happen when a constitutional commission expires, leaving behind a pending case. Attorney General Anil Nandalal had argued that with the expiration of the PSC in August, the case against the suspension had automatically ended. The judge said Mr. Slow had not been properly advised, and so the matter should have been filed in his individual capacity. Justice Prasad gave the parties timeliness for the submission of arguments after a date for an oral hearing would be set in the main case in which they are challenging their suspension. President Ali had suspended the commission when it had become obvious that that body would have announced the promotion of more than 100 police officers. Government has said that it does not recognize those promotions, and so they have not been published in the official gazette. The Slow-led commission had refused to promote a number of officers on the grounds that they had pending disciplinary matters. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony says talks are continuing with the United States-based Mount Sinai Health System to boost care and treatment in Guyana. He says this visit is a follow-up to a previous one. The health minister listed several non-communicable diseases that will be targeted with assistance from Mount Sinai Health System.
Well, this is a partnership that the government of Guyana is developing with Mount Sinai. We've had a previous visit from a very high-level team. So this particular team that is here is looking into various areas of healthcare in Guyana. We are looking at strengthening primary healthcare, for example, improving care for diabetic patients, looking at the possibility of improving oncology, cardiovascular services, among the areas that we are currently discussing.
Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony. The Ministry of Health wants to reduce kidney failure by focusing on public awareness and education. Health Ministerial Advisor Dr. Barry Ramsaran also says there should be outreaches to schools in order to improve kidney health and reduce the need for dialysis.
Let's save the kidneys before they have to come to dialysis. Therefore, that less and less people having dialysis, it means we can probably be giving them a better service, right? So I wanted to push that point in, prevention, right, and give you a challenge. A lot of young people here, the proprietors of both firms are fairly young. Make a reach out. Let's have wellness warriors in the schools, so that when they go back home, they will be able to influence the older people, right?
Biomed Energy and Dialysis Incorporated and Supreme Distributors on Wednesday signed a memorandum of understanding to provide free dialysis. Managing Director of Supreme Distributors Mohammed Fazol plans to eventually assist other dialysis clinics.
We just did not look at having this as a one-off venture for the Biomed Energy Clinic, but also looking at annual something where we can expand and to help other clinics across the country. As we know, dialysis is very, very expensive. I was told that some patients have to do dialysis 3 times a week. And when we look at some cost, then it's over $2 million per patient yearly.
Mr. Fazal also hopes that other businesses, non-governmental organizations, and other entities will see the need to support biomed energy and dialysis in extending the lives of persons whose kidneys have failed. March 10 is World Kidney Day. Now for the news in the region. Government workers in Suriname are getting a wage and salary increase of between 17 and 20%. Star News, however, reports that the security services are not happy with the pay hike. A number of unions representing other government workers are also not happy with the increase in wages and salaries. Government says that it is also paying 1,000 Suriname dollar purchasing power boots and an 800 Suriname dollar support allowance. The income tax-free limit has been increased so that Surinamis who are earning less than 4,000 Suriname dollars will not be paying income tax. The tax-free limits of the other tax brackets have also been adjusted. The Suriname government says that more than 20,000 pensioners will get a boost in purchasing power. Barbados's owners and operators of taxis and public service vehicles are appealing to the government there to assist them to grapple with increasing fuel prices. The war between Russia and Ukraine has seen a drastic cut in oil and gas supplies as part of a raft of sanctions against the Vladimir Putin administration. Since then, crude oil has increased to more than $100 per barrel. In Barbados, the transportation operators are suggesting that the government remove the annual registration fee for them, which was set at 50% of their existing road tax. In 2018, the government abolished the road tax for private and commercial vehicles and replaced it with a fuel tax. However, owners of commercial vehicles were made to pay an annual registration fee. Antigua and Barbuda's opposition United Progressive Party, UPP, is claiming victory for its proposed transferable work permit policy. As the Twin Island nation heads into a general election sometime this year, the UPP and the governing Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party have been trying to win the hearts of foreigners who are living there. The UPP says it had first proposed that work permits be transferred with specific industries such as tourism and security. Prime Minister Gaston Brown at the weekend said that the government would be quashing the need for workers to apply for new work permits if they change jobs and places of employment. Mr. Brown has agreed that it would be too costly for workers to do so. In its 2018 manifesto, the UPP promised the immigrant community that it would stop the current practice, which requires a fresh permit every time a worker changes employers. Since the launch of its current campaign, the party put that promise back on the table. And lastly, in the region, Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has announced that the government would order a commission of inquiry into the drowning of 4 divers. The Prime Minister has announced that a commission of inquiry will be formed to investigate the incident at Pario Limited in which 4 divers died. Dr. Rowley said the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries has been instructed to abandon the formation of a 5-member committee after the nominee for the Energy Chamber, Eugene Taya, removed himself from the process. He did so after objections were raised by the United National Congress and opposition leader Kamla Prasad Bisesar. They had accused Taya of having too close ties with the government and could not be independent. Rowley said he had come to the conclusion that the situation had been politicized to such a high degree that the public would not now accept the recommendations of that committee. He said the government will be approaching foreign experts, such as those used by Shell and BP, to form a 3-man commission. He said while it would cost millions of dollars, it seemed to be the only way the opposition might accept there would not be a cover-up, as people could be called and cross-examined. The Prime Minister's announcement represented a sharp turnaround from the position taken by the government only a few hours earlier on the same matter. And here now is your international news from the BBC.
Hello, I'm Eileen McHugh with the BBC News. The first high-level talks between Russia and Ukraine since President Putin launched his invasion have ended with no progress on a ceasefire to help aid reach civilians. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said negotiations had been difficult, but there was a readiness to continue dialogue. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov repeated a long list of demands, as our diplomatic correspondent James Landale explains.
In terms of the language, Mr. Lavrov did say that he wanted the war to come to an end. He said Russia had never wanted a war, that it was ready to strike a deal, but at the same time set out his demands, which was the denazification, he said, of Ukraine, the demilitarization of Ukraine, the recognition of Crimea, the acceptance of Ukraine's neutrality and the fact that it could never join the EU or NATO. So at the same time, Mr. Lavrov's language was very robust, very aggressive, attacking the authorities in Kiev.
The council in the besieged Ukrainian port of Mariupol says bombs have been raining down on the city centre. Russian forces have been bombarding the strategically important city for days. Officials say there's a spiralling crisis in Mariupol with no access to water, food and power. Sasha Volkov from the International Committee of the Red Cross is in Mariupol. We've voiced over his comments because of the poor quality of the line.
People started to attack each other for food.
People started to attack each other for food. People started to ruin someone's car to take the fuel out. People are getting sick already because of the cold. It's unavoidable, especially for those who are often confined in small spaces. It's really cold. We still have some fuel for the generators, so we have electricity for 3 or 4 hours a day.
The mayor of Kiev says close to 2 million people, nearly half of the population, have fled the city. Vitaly Klitschko said the Ukrainian capital had been turned into a fortress at every street, building and checkpoint. Britain has imposed sanctions on the billionaire Russian owner of Chelsea Football Club, Roman Abramovich. He's on a new list of Russians the government says have close links to President Putin. They'll face asset freezes and travel bans. Daniel Sanford reports.
The new UK sanctions have been imposed on 7 Russian billionaires, including the head of the gas giant Gazprom and the head of the huge oil company Rosneft. But the name that stands out is Roman Abramovich, who's described in the sanctions documents as a pro-Kremlin oligarch and is the ultimate owner of Chelsea Football Club. Chelsea is now banned from doing business, but has been given a special licence to allow it to play football and pay the salaries of its players and staff. What the club can't do is sell any more tickets or merchandise or buy or sell players.
World News from the BBC. The Russian State Museum, the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, has asked Italian galleries to return on-loan artworks. They include a masterpiece by the Venetian painter Titian. It's currently on show at the Palazzo Reale in Milan. The US Vice President Kamala Harris, who's on a visit to Poland, says America is prepared to defend every inch of NATO territory. She also promised that Ukraine would continue to receive all the support it needed. The Vice President said Russia's attacks had caused what she called atrocities of unimaginable proportions and called for an international investigation. In other news, India's governing BJP is on course for a comfortable victory in regional elections in the most populous state, Uttar Pradesh. It also looks set to retain control in 3 smaller states, Manipur, Goa and Uttarakhand. From Delhi, here's Rajini Vajanathan.
These votes, which followed last year's devastating COVID wave and the mass farmers' protests, were also seen as a referendum on the BJP's Hindu nationalist agenda. The biggest prize for the party was retaining control of the state of Uttar Pradesh, home to more than 240 million people. The BJP's win will embolden their agenda, but it will also raise concerns among the nation's Muslims, who make up a sizable minority and who fear for their rights and India's secular values.
A court in Kenya has ruled that British soldiers accused of causing a huge fire in a wildlife reserve do not have sovereign immunity. The Environment and Land Court in the town of Nanyuki directed representatives from the Kenyan and British governments to decide whether the soldiers were to blame for the fire, which burnt more than 10,000 acres of the private Loldega Conservancy last year. A lobby group and almost 1,000 people living in the area sued the British Army Training Unit for environmental damage. BBC News.
And that was your international news from the BBC. Here now is a recap of your highlights. The High Court has ruled that former chairman of the Police Service Commission, Paul Slow, can challenge the decision to suspend him, although the life of that commission has expired. In the region, foreigners in Antigua and Barbuda no longer have to apply for new work permits if they change employers. And internationally, the bombing of a children's hospital in Ukraine has raised concerns that Russia has committed a war crime. And that was your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.